seen this term called Sino-imperialism, right, by the Western media, because Chinese companies do have a lot of investments in multiple African countries. So I think over these years, I've seen so many reports by Western media describing China as the new imperialists in Africa. So do you see China as a new imperialist power in Africa?
The point is that we know what imperialism is. It's not for them to try and bandy words around. Okay? There's a long history of imperialism in Africa, and it was not through the Chinese. We're talking about 600 years within which our people have been subjected to slavery, the slave trade, and transportation to America. That's an experience that China shared. We're talking about a period that followed the slave trade of colonialism, in which they sat around a table in Berlin and divided our continent like real estate. We live in countries where there are borders that are drawn through people's houses because they didn't have the diligence to do a survey and avoid that. The people literally have your bedroom in Ghana, your bathroom in Togo, because of the casual way in which French and British forces divided our country. That was not China. The countries that exist in Africa today, the borders that exist, were created by Europeans. Before the Berlin Conference, there were no African states. There was a creation of Europe. And those states were created not for our benefit, but to limit the conflict amongst Europeans about who gets to exploit which parts of the continent. That was imperialism. China wasn't there. Okay? The historical records show that Chinese sailors and armadas had come to the east coast of Africa centuries ago, discovered, had been curious, but had sailed back and left the people to develop on their own. The processes that we call imperialism, slavery, colonialism, and the new colonial arrangements we have today, in which we have what we call flag and national anthem independence, but the real levers that control our economy are not ours. That's neocolonialism. Okay?
And they have no right to choose friends for us.
Well, but that's the point.
They have no right to choose friends for us. Mm-hmm. We have the right to choose our own friends. Mm-hmm. They became associated with us not through voluntary association. They imposed themselves on us. They gave us countries we didn't have. We had one country, one continent. Mm-hmm. They divided our continent into countries, which, as Comrade Opoku is saying, were theirs. They were not our countries, they were their countries. But with humility, we have accepted them. Okay, let them be our countries. But still more, they are not satisfied with our humility, with our acceptance of them. We don't hate them, but we can live together in a new time, in a new way, in a new world, with dignity, with respect for each other, with cooperation and solidarity. The problem they have is because they have never had relations with other countries based on solidarity. They have always had imperial relationships. Mm-hmm. They cannot believe that human beings can associate with each other based on solidarity. They cannot believe we can have a relationship with the Chinese that is based on solidarity, on human unity, on common struggles, unified struggles. They think every relationship with a person who is well off than us as Africans is always dominating us. They think we can never have a relationship of equality with anybody else. And also there's a racist attitude in this. Do they think we Africans are fools? Who everybody should dominate the way they dominated us for over 500, 600 years? The Chinese should only come to dominate us? They don't see their domination of us as domination, as something wrong. But they see our association with the Chinese as domination, imperial domination. Let them remove this racist attitude, this racist arrogance, and start to see us as human beings, deserving their respect, deserving their compassion. We have dignity, we have human dignity that deserves respect.
And that reminds me of the interview that the leader of Barbados did with the BBC reporter, because the reporter was so kind of arrogant when she asked the question, because basically she was implying that Barbados are being manipulated, being used as puppet by China through these investments. And the leader of Barbados just said, well, if this is the way you see, that's basically how you see us, because you see us as puppets. So you thought everybody else are using us as puppets. So it's the same, right?
That's correct. They don't have any other frame of reference for a relationship with Africa. It must be master-servant. It is imperialist in its nature. Therefore, what they see happening is China supplanting their imperialism, their empire. They cannot, as Fred said, they cannot conceive of an equal relationship. That's not imperialism. Imperialism doesn't occur just because the two parties have different economic strengths. Imperialism is a relationship of exploitation. And to have imperialism, China would have to be a country in which your big private capital dominates the states. And the state essentially works as a PR firm and as an enforcer for private capital in China. And that is manifestly not the situation. The Chinese state represents the people and asserts the authority of the people over all sectors of the economy, including private capital. China has a lot going for it. But the state is the state, and capital is a subordinate entity within the Chinese community. And in your relationships with Africa, those relationships, the Chinese state is not an imperialist power. And there's a long history, as Fred said, of collaboration. He talked about the situation in southeastern Africa and the railway. That's not a small example, because we're talking about the period in which China was not the wealthy country that it is today. And there were sacrifices. It meant extreme sacrifice for the Chinese people to help another people develop what was really crucial infrastructure. And it's not an isolated case. China's support was a support to the entire Africa within a clear, mutually agreed strategic framework. Chinese engineers worked in Mali, they worked in Ghana, they worked in all over the continent. And this was way before China became a major economic force within the world. Okay. The arrival of that position that China has now is not imperialist. China has become the world's leading economy, but its relationships with other countries are not imperial relationships. They are not. It's baseless. The problem that the media in the West have, as I said, is that they have no other frame of reference. Africa is there to be exploited. If somebody else has arrived, it must be another exploitation program.
It's called projection.
Yes. If you are used to abusive relationships with somebody, you will never believe that they can have a relationship based on love and mutual respect. They think everybody who deals with Africa in an abusive way. It's an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
They have never had a relationship with us that is not abusive. And they think the Chinese or anyone else who has a relationship with us, who has a little bit more than we have economically, is also in an abusive relationship with us. We are not in an abusive relationship with China. We are in a relationship that started on a mutual respect, on solidarity, on common aims. And today we can say on a shared destiny.
You know what they say, a bear cub does not grow up to become a snake. It grows up to become a bear. It is a snake egg that hatches snakes and grows up to be big snakes. The mere fact that China's economic position has improved radically.
Without colonizing a single country in the world, without being an imperial power, they can't understand that China has developed without a single colony, without plundering any one country in the world. The development of China cannot be said to have come from African resources. Their development came from African resources.
Yes.
The big buildings you see in Europe came from Africa. The big buildings you see in China did not come from pillaging African resources. And they can't understand that a country can develop itself.
How can you build your wealth without exploiting others?
Without exploiting others. They don't understand that because all they know is exploitation. Because the capitalist system was built through plunder, global plunder.